Welcome to the Redacted Culture Cast. I am your host, who has still not given his name. But as a guest, I've got Alex here. Alex is wearing a Flux Defense t-shirt, but there's a little bit more to you than just the Raider. So, Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so looking in your backlog of dudes that have been on so far, I feel like I'm the most basic, normal dude. Like, I only entered the, let's say, the firearm culture in 2018. Like end of 2018. So nothing, I don't have prior experience, and believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there who their families never were into hunting or shooting. None of their friends were. So it kind of had to happen naturally. But no, I have been working at Flux Defense since 2019, which, as you can see, is like right after I got into the gun kind of sphere. But then I have just tried to diversify as much as possible in every single way in terms of not only how I make money, but just like my interests. I feel like I have a lot of hobbies. I'm not exactly a master at any of them, but, you know, it's the jack of all trades type of thing.
Now, if people want to find you, if they want to follow you, where would you like them to go?
So, probably just freetime.alex on Instagram. That's like my main one. And anyone who at least follows me there knows it's like, there's nothing serious. It's most of it is levity, you know? I'll never get deep into parts builds and debates and all that kind of stuff. It's more just, it's honestly kind of like a journal for my life to show my kids, but it does update people on where things are going with like Flux Defense or Tumi tactics or any of my other things.
All right, so then we'll get into a little bit of Flux Defense and Tumi in a minute here. So if that's the case, then thank you for coming on the show. Thanks. You know, you and I have been able to have a couple conversations over some time, but thanks for coming on. At this point in time, you know where we're at. This is the Redacted Culture Cast. So if you want to support the channel, and for those of you who have been, thank you very much. You can find all of our merch at redactedllc.com. And you follow us on Instagram at RedactedLLC. We have more things in the works always, but thank you very much. On to the important business. So, Alex, so you do not come from a family of firearms. I did.
No.
How was that? Would you say that your family was sort of like politically against it, or was it just like not a thing?
It was just not a thing. Like politically, I don't think we ever even talked about it ever. Not even my grandparents were really into it either. So it was basically non-existent, which is a really interesting place to come from.
Yeah, because often I came from an area where my family was a group of firearms, but there were elements of my family, extended family, as the ring grew out, where some it was just not a thing to them, and some were against it, which is which is kind of its own thing, and so it's like gun culture for me was something I grew up in. I'm interested to hear for you what it was like when people say getting into guns. It's like, are you joining the gun culture, or are you just buying a thing, or is it like, you know, it's certainly more substantial than just, well, I have it.
Yeah.
Like some people are into Tupperware
because it was very much a mid-20s kind of thing. I made a video about this in the past, like maybe 5 years ago, maybe like 3 years ago, talking about how video games got me into guns. And I know that's something that happens to a lot of people, but it was truly like my only step into it. And it was around, you know, like 25 years old where I was married. I started to have those instinctual protection things that you have as a husband. And that's when I started doing kind of my research into like, what is the best handgun I can get to protect my loved ones. So, and I think it was cool that it came naturally like that. You know, I could have again, I could have bought like scars or this or that over the years just because of video games, but it didn't take it took me getting married to finally get the protection aspect.
They say that when you have kids, it changes your life, and I don't have kids, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But getting married for me didn't have the same, I guess, it didn't have the same effect as in it, but there was let's just say a change in the condition where now it wasn't, because it was always like, my dad was always a protector of the family, so I grew up with it, but it's one thing to think about and have this idea that you're going to have to defend your family, defend your wife or whatever, or just be there, be responsible for them. And then it's another one for her to be in the house with you. And you're like, oh, it's not like the same. You feel it differently. It takes some growing into.
Yeah.
Well, then, so marriage also marriage didn't get you out of guns. It got you into guns.
Got me into it. And I did have to convince my wife that it was something that I thought was important enough to have in the house. She wasn't against guns either. She came from a family that had, very, very much into guns. But it took some convincing to let her kind of see like my side of things. Like, this is no longer like your dad protecting you. It's now me.
Fair. Very fair. Yeah. That's kind of like, I don't even want to like reference the hero. I want to reference the hero's journey in a sense of like kind of taking up the mantle yourself. So you kind of, as you said, you're 25, you get it, you quote unquote get into guns. You go down that long, dark, dangerous road as presented by, the media or whatever that makes you into an alt-right superhero or whatever the term is now, because I don't really care. And you end up at Flux Defense. So that's not Flux Defense is kind of like, it's one of those if you know brands for sure. In a good way, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, it was. Some people know about the Flux Defense, some people don't.
Yeah, some people have no idea because and again, our reach has not been as big due to mostly manufacturing things, which we'll probably get into. But I fell into Flux in like the weirdest way. It was of like the company had only been running for like 2 months or 3 months by the time I entered, and it was strange because I was new to guns. Because I had been doing all the research on how to protect my family, I got into that YouTube side of things where I was watching literally on every single type of gun videos, forgotten weapons, a lot of the basic, the major YouTubers like TFB TV and Mac, and just getting as much information as possible. And I was working a job where I had to travel nonstop. I was married, but I also was out of town like 3 weeks out of 4 or 5, which was like, it paid good, but I hated it. And not only that, my dad was my boss. So there was a lot of reasons for me to kind of like grow out of that type of thing. As a married, being married, I want to spend time with my wife more than anyone else. So what happened was I went on a job in Mexico. It was taking weeks and it was taking too long, and our dog died while I was gone.
Oof.
And it triggered me to just go like, I can't travel anymore. I can't do this because my wife is home alone, crying, having a rough time. Our dog died. I need to find a new job. And my wife was kind of like, what are we going to do? Like, you don't have a degree in school. She has a business degree from college. I had gone to like 4 different colleges, and I kind of just failed by choice almost, of just like, I just couldn't do it. So we were in a spot where it's just like, what do I do? I want to get a new job. Everything's kind of telling me that it's hard, like it's gonna be months. And I was on Instagram one day, and I saw Flux Defense's like one of their first posts within those first couple of months. And the tag from the location on Flux Defense said South Salt Lake, Utah. And I was like, that's not far. Maybe I'll just DM them and see if there's any open positions. So I did that night, and I got a message back like within a couple minutes, and they're just like, yeah, come on by and we'll see if it's a good fit for you. Now, little did I know it was just the two owners who had just barely started this company, and very quickly within the first couple of weeks, I realized like they needed a lot of help, just getting things running smoothly and getting the workload taken off of them. And that started my true entry into the gun sphere, other than just owning a gun.
So you went from did all this took the time of what, a year, 2 years or so at most?
Like weeks. So I got I got my first gun half a year before. And then it all happened just kind of immediately. Mm-hmm. And I came from a small business where I had to travel a lot, like working with family. And so at least I had some of the skills I already would have needed to help with a small business. And I don't call myself people call themselves entrepreneurs. I heard a term a while ago, an intrapreneur, where you'd kind of like enter into a business and then literally just help it from there on out grow a little bit better. So
I've had some conversations with some people lately that were talking about gun culture and actually in a greater perspective, business, like going into business culture, and mm-hmm. You know, there's a certain line of people who pursue celebrity. Let's just call it pursue celebrity. Like, I'm certainly more on the lines of being a public figure. Now, I'm not a huge following. I'm not a massive, like whatever. But the point being said is that, like, when you look at my work, it's all pretty public facing. And so, but there's a very large amount of people who don't. And, and I know a lot of them, closely. And it's not, I have thoroughly enjoyed the fact that social media has caught on to teasing the overblown entrepreneur line. Yeah. Where everyone has to be like, was the Sigma grind set or whatever it is, where it's like, you work 27 hours a day. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's entertaining. It is. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, whatever, these people are stupid. But there is a huge part to, I know people when we have conversations about gun culture tend to come around to addressing the issue of ego within the industry, and everyone wants to be the whatever it is, and like it doesn't matter where you go in the world, you're going to run into that. It's not unique to the gun culture. Maybe it's a little bit more forward facing because we tend to at least promote aggression as a form of like industriousness, maybe, but. Interesting. So you came into the company and said, I can fix this. Cool.
It was very much the two owners, Ben and Arias, they're geniuses. They're engineering geniuses, but I could tell from the get-go they were just so overloaded with, the additional things that takes to run a business, which is like the customer service, the massive amount of emails that come in daily, weekly, that need consistent responses to, shipping product and getting deeper into it, like ordering product from vendors. And it's really hard to keep on designing and engineering amazing stuff while you're having to do all that other stuff at the same time. So I think my initial thing when I first couple days working there, it was like, hey, whatever you don't want to do, you don't have time to do, put it on my shoulders and I will sort it out and figure it out. And you guys continue to do the important stuff. So it was just a 0 to 100 pretty quick.
Good. Well, I mean, I guess awesome. It's good to hear. It's not. We do need success stories in this world that isn't like, Ranger got Medal of Honor. Rah. It's like, oh yeah. Well, we actually made this business work because we could figure out a logistics supply chain, and that's something I'm trying to figure out myself.
Yeah, it's freaking cool. It's big work.
So
But yeah,
you've been around with Flux for quite a while then, since some of their earlier days.
yep.
Let's dig
Pre-Raider.
into that. So pre-Raider, yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely came post-Raider. That's going to get clipped and turned into something weird. Oh no.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Raider. So what was Flux Defense doing before the Raider? I guess I don't know everything.
Yeah, initially it was Glock based, and for good reason. You know, like you look out at the market, and if you're going to make a product, it's going to have to be, and especially if you're new, Glock based, AR-15 based, to capture the majority of the market. So we were making Glock braces and little attachments, flash mags, which is like a magazine caddy that you can keep a spare mag on the gun itself, which had been done in the past, but it was just, at least to us, it was like, why not? You double the capacity of your weapon system on body. You don't have a spare mag. You got to like figure out how to store. So even from the beginning, the Glock braces that we made were same thing, spring ejected. You could keep like 40 something rounds on the system at a time, and it made for, you know, at that point we believed the perfect PDW because it was small. It was really small. And then over time, the P320 came out, or it had been out, but Ben and Arius really looked at the FCU, the fire control unit, how you can take that out of the module, and it just like, it presented the opportunity that we had to get to as fast as we could. Which then leads into like, how do you manufacture something as fast as you can with like no money? And it took us down that hole of like, well, you can't really machine things with no money. You can't really make you can't make molds with like no money. And that put us down the 3D printing route, which is where we started. Which is why I have such like love for HRF Concepts and Emissary Development and all these companies that use that type of printing.
Yeah, so what do they call it? Additive manufacturing. If you want to be one of those intelligentsias.
Yeah.
So the earliest versions of the Flux, what became the Flux Raider, were all 3D printed effectively.
Yeah, the MP17 was our first push into that P320, and yeah, that was a 3D printed. It was a production level 3D printing, not like your garage stuff. So it was able to withstand higher impact. There's a big difference between those two, which is why we felt comfortable enough selling those, because there's no way we would have done it with the basic stuff. So it had to meet a couple of criteria, just like being robust, not just break, not shatter. And that took us down, obviously, to making our first mold for the Raider as it currently is, which has been a mess ever since.
Has been a mess. We'll have to get into that. So
Yeah.
let's go back. Let's stick to this one. Yeah, I definitely understand like the allure and the objective facing Glock and AR-15 parts. Like if you can build a product that solves a problem for one of those two platforms, you're going to be able to. You have I wouldn't say a captured audience, but it makes sense. The SIG P320 was an interesting handgun because I remember when it first came out. I remember when they first released it, and it was like, oh, okay. That was kind of the dawn of the era. It was the dawn of the era that came after you had two choices, the Smith & Wesson M&P and the Glock. Because I was definitely that guy. When I got out of the military, I was like, I'm not going to get a Glock because I don't want to be a Glock guy. And then,
I was the same.
Glock. So like, yep. Like lo and behold, it's just like, okay, dude, I could have erased years of stupid just being like, okay, I'm going to pick one up and be fine with it. So but the SIG P320 came out, and its original release I wouldn't say that it was lackluster. It was just sort of like, well, you had the safety issue, the grip was terrible, and the idea of it was really cool, but
Yeah.
It did that gun did not come alive until they came out with the second, basically the 2.0, which is like the newer grip, and then just kind of really started pushing it that way. And that's when I discovered you guys, because I was heavily influenced by somebody, and I switched over from Glock to SIG at that time, partially because of for a number of reasons, but one of them being I was used to shooting competition, and the grip angle of the SIG P320 was more advantageous for shooting a red dot for me than trying to manipulate a Glock and shoot using a red dot on a Glock. It was much cleaner and more natural for me.
Yeah.
So the fire control unit now is something that you guys took advantage of, which is you can pull the trigger and the serial numbered parts out and put it into a new chassis. All right, so that makes sense. And do you think that it'd be interesting to see if that's going to be sort of the future of firearms? Because I don't really see the AR-15 serializing the trigger group.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I hope every single handgun company out there does the same thing P320 does. I just don't know how they can do it in the same way, which obviously requires more work on our side to figure that stuff out. But there's other companies that have been doing it, like the Beretta APX. I think that's a fire control unit system. The IWI Masada, same thing. The Ruger 5.7. And the reason I know this stuff is because people just constantly ask us in the emails, once they find out that a pistol has that fire control group, when are you going to make this? When are you going to make this?
When are you going to make a 5.7?
Right. And so we're just like, well, the big thing is, one, we're sorting out our manufacturing issues as is, just for the P321. But when a new handgun comes out like that Ruger 5.7, how many people have that? How much, I guess the big thing is on the back end of the company stuff, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop and then make a mold for a specific, fire control unit. So people, like, before even a gun will come out, will be like, when is this coming out? It's going to come out soon. Just like, well, we need quite a few people need to buy this gun first.
Or maybe Ruger would like you a lot if you just made one. You just made one. They
probably would.
And they're like,
yeah. Which I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. And I think that's the line we'll be going down, is to tackle all of these pistols that have the fire control unit as a feature.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense for you to be able to expand the capability of it. But I've never seen the idea of the Raider as something to. I've never seen your company as like another Smith & Wesson that you're like, okay, cool. Well, we're going to have our lineup of products and they're all going to be one-offs of each other. Rather, I've always seen Flux Defense as somewhat of part of like the new generation of manufacturing in the firearms industry, where people are kind of straying away from, let's just call it the old ways. Like you had all metal guns to then the plastic fantastics, which this is all just time dating conversation. So now we're even in a new phase where you have like people are 3D printing their own parts at home, which is one thing. But then you've got companies like Flux, like you guys, or Emissary Development, or HRF, or we had Villain Weapon Systems on, or you could say Black Triangle, or and all these people are, instead of trying to create a massive corporate structure from the beginning, are like, you have a skeleton crew of people that are focusing on their project and they're building a specific item for a specific use case. And I think the Flux Defense, I was trying to do some research even on my own time before we came on the show, and I was like, people were saying it was an argument for the new PDW. It's an argument of returning to the idea of a PDW, or it solves a problem. And I think for me, it fits in a block between two projects. It fits between an MP5 SD and a handgun.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things I think and it's a criticism, yes, but a lot of people over time, at least in the beginning of the company, were like, why are you creating a solution to a problem nobody has? Which always has been like a thing where, like, if you don't understand the concept of the PDW, and especially within the civilian side, but not only that, the plainclothes, low vis, law enforcement, military side, then it's not going to really make sense because, yeah, if you can fit an AR in your truck, there's no reason to. And if that's your main form of defense, well, why would you do anything smaller than that? If you're concealed carrying a pistol, why would you try to hide a Raider up in your jacket type of thing? It doesn't make sense to a portion of the market out there, but there are people who have a very specific role where a handgun's not enough, but you can't possibly carry an AR with you in an effective manner,
Yeah,
So
there's a use case within. I'm sorry. I guess there must be enough of a delay going on. I apologize for stepping on you.
It's good.
So there is a use case within, let's just call it the professional world, which will come at a certain. It means a couple things to a couple different people, but there is a use case within the professional world that is pretty germane to a small market. But at the same time, I think much of your credit of the company is not purely you're not Navy SEAL operator, CIA man, Jack Ryan, Reacher, people, I guess is the way I can say it. And I would disagree with this idea completely that you need to justify every element of your, let's just say, loadout in a way that I don't know how to say it any other way than you need to like justify your entire everything that you have, every purchase you have for the sole specific purpose of answering a use case within a designated scenario in every shape and format. Like there's not because then we just end up all day arguing scenarios. Maybe
I saw your video that you just recorded a little bit earlier of gun debates and gun build debates and why it's stupid and necessary, and a lot of that like fell right into what we had been talking about a couple weeks ago. Just like, yeah, exactly. You're never going to know, and if you go down that rabbit hole of I have to prepare for every single little thing, you very quickly become a target. You're almost targeting yourself in a way. So
yeah, well, like this comes out in a couple of different ways. Like we've kind of gone through the gray man trope so much so that it's become somewhat like, I don't know how to say. I guess I don't know how to say this. I do. We've gone through the gray man trope within gun culture, where like I remember the first blog post I ever did that went somewhat viral was like, well, is gray the new black? Like, is tactical gray the new black? Because I used to remember people buying plate carriers in black, and now they're buying them in wolf gray or tactical gray or gray man gray, and it's like whatever, but the whole gray man concept really became a bigger thing in 2013. And then by now, whatever became the trend of the gray man was so oversaturated that you could pick those people out. And we do forget, though, that we are people within the culture, so we kind of know what to look for. At least we have an idea. Like if I see a guy wearing Solomon shoes and he's got a flannel on and he's got a black multicam baseball cap, he's probably in the gun culture. Sure. Yeah. But even now it's like if I see someone who is dressing like me, like a tighter, like I'm not wearing skinny jeans, but I'm definitely wearing a slimmer cut. And then like Vans and a black t-shirt, I'm like, he's probably one of our guys.
Yeah.
Whereas Go ahead.
Oh, it just reminds me of like popularity in high school. Uh, when you're in high school, most of the popular crowd dresses about the exact same. And what happens, I think they age up and they go into the military, do tier one stuff or, you know, do agency type stuff. And when they're off duty, they're still dressing the same as how they thought it was in high school, but they're just adding the tactical element on top. And so I think we get a lot of that Vans skinny jeans because that's what I wore in high school. But now that's what people our age who have been in service or in tier one positions, pictures leak of them doing that and wearing that. And everybody kind of takes that as that's now the standard to be this level. I've always thought that was interesting. Yeah. Like I think it stems from high school fashion.
Interesting. I was homeschooled, so I have no input there.
Yeah.
I was not a popular high school kid with the preppy folks or whatever it was. I was the homeschooled guy. So I didn't get into skinnier jeans until like 3 years ago when I started doing like CQB in them and going, oh, this is actually kind of nice. Like having flexibility and not hearing my pants go. Whoosh, 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 whoosh,
oh, low drag, but it's not catching on things.
Yeah, right now I just don't have enough pockets. I'm missing my cries with 2, 4, 6, 8, like 12 pockets.
Yeah,
I have so many cans of dip.
But no, it makes me think of, at least now with the social media stuff, something we were talking about a bit in the past was that gear acquisition syndrome that didn't quite take place in the gun culture as much until social media was more popping, which happens to be right when I entered.
Yeah, define gear acquisition syndrome because I can think of versions of it that predate social media.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I think maybe it's just gone faster, as in if you don't have that new thing, like you feel like it's going to fill your heart, your gear, your kit is a personal thing. So if you don't have that new thing that everybody's loving and raving about, whether it's a new plate carrier, new helmet, new ear pro, anything, you could pick anything, and you think it's going to fill that void. So gear acquisition syndrome to me is just like picking up that new piece of gear because you see it on social media and it's this thing that's supposed to be amazing, and then realizing it's just another piece of kit. And a lot of people end up, selling it not long after because they realize they went a little too hard and maybe spent too much money on getting the thing that everybody loves. Which again, like you're saying, has been around for a long time. I just wonder with Instagram the way it is now that it's not just like it's a quicker turnover.
Yeah, there's definitely been trends that roll through, whether it's gun culture or Americana or just, trends have changed, but I think you can make the argument pretty solidly that that social media has influenced it and escalated it, at least faster, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely faster. Like you think about like barrel length, like 1 year 13.5 is popular, the next year 14.7 or 13.7 and 14.5 and 11.8 and whatever, right? Like it kind of rolls through. And when you step back a little bit and you go, you can kind of see it now. Can you see it in yourself? I think is the hard question. Am I able to say, oh, I'm being influenced, I want to get this, not for practical reasons, not for any reason that I would actually be okay with, but do I really just want to get this thing because it's the new thing?
Yeah. And we all want to do that, New thing sometimes does offer a better system overall. But, it happens so much in the camera community where a new lens will come out and they'll sell other lenses just to afford that new lens and just realize it's barely better. The margin of better is like so small that in the end, you probably kind of lose financially.
I'm definitely a camera amateur.
Me too. I've only been in it for like 2 years now. Again, I've fallen
Okay,
into a
so we're
lot of
about the
things
same.
pretty quickly. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So the gun. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go.
One thing about the gear acquisition syndrome that I've seen that I've had to even criticize myself for plenty of times is that what I'm doing is, let's just say there's an item that I want, and I'm actually going to use the
Hmm.
Flux Defense Raider as an example,
Hmm.
because there's a place in my heart that says, you know, whatever. But like,
Yeah.
so now, so if I'm sitting down at the table and I'm going, I don't have a backpack gun that's smaller than an AR-15 with a law folder a law folder system, like whatever. Or I don't have, you know, like, ooh, you know, I'm kind of, what happens if I, and so I'll sit down
Hmm.
and I'll start thinking of scenarios that could take place where having a Flux Defense Raider would be the very specific tool for that scenario.
Hmm.
And so what I'll do is I'll spend time convincing myself that buying one is not an impulse purchase, but actually a practical purchase.
Yeah.
And then once I buy it, what ends up happening is I put it on the shelf, or I take it to the range. I go fancy, take it to the
Hmm.
range, put it together, play with it a bunch. Eventually, find one or two things where I'm like, oh man, I wish this was different. Shoot it every once in a while. Bring it out as like a party trick when I invite some people over, and then I
Yeah.
just put it away. And
Hmm.
then like, well, you know, that scenario, or even I might build it into like a little bug out bag or an EDC pack or whatever it is, right? But
Yeah.
like the issue being is that I didn't start with a mission that sent me
Hmm.
to go pick it up, and that was like that's where I'm going. It was like I designed a mission set for the sake of justifying purchasing the thing that I wanted,
Hmm.
and that is a hard line conversation within gun culture as a whole
Hmm.
where we make the argument that, and I've done this to myself, I will become an outdoorsy night vision cool guy once I move to this state.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you do it now? And my wife will tell me, well,
Hmm.
why aren't you doing it now? Why aren't you
Yeah.
doing it now? Like you have outdoors, or
Hmm.
you know what? I cannot be a part of the gun culture until I have night vision, because
Uh-huh.
everything's night vision right now. Or I can't be a part of, you know what? If I buy this thing, then I can be a part of this thing.
Hmm.
And I have done that to myself, either to make excuses to avoid doing the thing that I'm saying that I want to do, or I have done that to justify spending money on something that maybe I shouldn't be spending money on right now.
Yeah. It's hard. We know we've all done it, and it's funny because I think 90% of the people in gun culture right now, it's like an active thing they're trying to fight. uh, but that's where I think the culture at least in the last year or so, I've seen a lot more push of like, just go out and do the thing that you want to do. And that's the true test of what you have. Is it inadequate for the job, or is it exactly what you need? Is there a little extra thing that will help? Maybe you hike a lot with a heavy gun and your sling just cuts into your neck a ton. Like everybody who hikes with their kit knows that that's a thing that can happen. And then you see that piece that like, oh, it will keep the sling off your neck and kind of more onto your plate carrier on your chest rig. I think that's like more the direction. I'm seeing a push of more of that, of just like, use your stuff. It will cure you of the gear acquisition syndrome, because then you won't need the thing if your thing is already perfect for the situation you currently use it for. So
Yeah, or even if it isn't perfect, focus on the thing that you're trying to solve. You know, are you
yeah.
trying to get good at competition? I knew a guy who eventually became a world class competitive shooter, and he was competing against people with $5,000 race guns, and he wasn't using one. Is he
Mm-hmm.
the rule? No. Is he the exception? Absolutely. But what he did is I don't know how methodical it is because I don't know the inside workings of his brain, but he worked his way until he was in a position which justified a $5,000 race gun, and he continued to just take off. And that's a good story. But
Yeah.
I also think that, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I find it, I find it very close to home. I find it very close to home when it comes to like how we think about, what we're trying to do and how we're trying to go out and do stuff, and the gear acquisition is cool and all, I don't think anyone, and another part worth mentioning, and this sounds a little strange, is that like if you spend $3,000 on a gun that you don't need, at least it's only $3,000, dude. It's not a $30,000 car. You're not, it's an expensive, if it's an oops, it's an expensive oops, and people have made that oops, but at least it's not a $30,000 car.
Yeah.
At least
might not
it's
be like a life-changing
defining
oops.
Yeah, and there's like, you can get out of it, but you can get out of it because you're like, if you impulse buy something in the firearms industry, in the gun culture, generally speaking, you can sell it. You're not going to get your resale value. You just have to admit it. The resale value in the firearms industry, with the exception of very specific items, is pretty small.
Yeah.
But and I think another thing about gear acquisition that is a perhaps more personal is, if you set your mind on getting a certain thing and you know that you're just going to get it, stop asking for advice about it because you're not listening anyway. Or maybe another way of saying it is, I've had it happen, and I know to other people it's happened plenty of times where somebody will come and ask them to solve a problem. Like, hey, I'm looking at buying a gun for home defense.
Yeah.
So you go down the line and you're like, well, you live in this neighborhood in this kind of house, and by the end of the way, you're always going to end up at AR-15 because AR-15 is probably the best home defense weapon. There are exceptions to the rule, but like, okay, dude, if you're asking the question of what should I get a home defense gun, if you're even asking that question, you should not be trying to argue yourself into a position. You should be listening at that point in time.
Yeah.
But if you're in the position of like, okay, I want a home defense weapon, and somebody comes to the conclusion that, well, I would recommend getting an AR-15 if it's in your budget. This is kind of the left and right limits of what you're looking at. You can get a pistol, put this kind of optic on it. I would suggest at least a light, maybe irons and a light, something like that. Like blah, 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 go down that line. And they're like, cool, well, I'm going to go buy, like 457 Casull. And you're like, or I'm going to, and they're like, well, I've decided to get like a Ruger Blackhawk because, revolvers, this, that, and the reason. And you're like, well, then why did you even ask? Like, why? It turns out they already bought it. Why'd you ask for advice? Like, I'm confused. So,
yeah.
I think there's a certain amount of humility that needs to come from the gun culture when it goes into, buying stuff, because we do make our camo choice our identity.
Yeah. Hey, and you just moved too, so camo choices now. It's on the table now.
Oh no, multicam. Just we're done. Like, I've never been like my kit's in multicam black because that's how I'm a gangster.
That's why here in Utah we've got the whole arid thing, man. It's real. Multicam does look really good, and it does fit in quite well. But man, a lot of Utah is just that arid is perfect.
I'll have to start working on an arid kit because I've got. This is where it sounds really sad. I have a multicam kit and I have a multicam black kit, and I have both of them right now, and it's like, okay. I also moved to an arid environment, so I'm going to have to eventually make the transition. But as of right now, it's multicam black for Instagram, dude.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've used plenty of multicam worldwide, and I don't know. Like, here's the goofy question when it comes to camo. Like, sometimes you can like the difference between multicam and multicam arid is not massive, but in certain scenarios, it really does play a factor. And then, but like, sometimes the arguments over camo. I remember when the Army went from ACUs to like multicam, or their knockoff multicam, which was OCP, and I remember that because it was like, okay, finally we have a camo that isn't absolute garbage. And the ACU was just an absolute garbage camo. But you're talking about a transition from something that's a trash can dumpster fire that like literally turns pink if you wash it too much, to this, base, like, mom, can we have multicam? No, we have multicam at home. Camouflage pattern, which is at least better. And both of them will, or one of them will complement skillcraft. The other one will make skillcraft more difficult. So if you can get into a camo pattern that complements skillcraft, we're done, right? I don't need something that makes skillcraft more difficult. And I mean skillcraft like stalking and creeping and blending and moving and
Oh, cool.
Awkward silence.
Now, I've slowly been building my entire loadout to match what I do. And it's taken a while. Like, it's taken a long time to figure out what exactly I even like. But it's nice to finally be like honing in. I feel like it's been a journey, and I've always felt this way when it comes to like, you've seen Mulan, the old Disney movie?
The old Disney movie, yes.
Yeah. So like her family, they have their cabinet that they open up, and it's the family set of armor that the dad uses whenever he's got to go to war. And I've always believed everybody should have that. And it's just, I feel like I'm honing in, like I said, to my finished cabinet of just like, this is what I would use. And I don't feel like I would lack anything.
I think that I do think that's a good thing. This is kind of the argument, the comma but to gear acquisition syndrome is it does feel really good when you're like, oh, I've been working on this concept for a while, and I'm finally honing it into something that really works. Whether it's pouch placement or swapping things out, and being where I'm at, I've probably used 20 different plate carriers.
Yeah.
And it's like, can I build my body to better handle it? Yes. I can get in better shape and not have to, because if you've only worn a plate carrier recreationally, once you start wearing it for like 12 hours a day for 3 days in a row, you really start figuring out where the problems with that plate carrier are, and it's like it'll throw you sideways, or you got to climb a mountain, or you got to cross a desert, or drive in a truck, or but when you can like make those creature comforts a little bit better, and you really, it all works together where you're not looking for anything. You know where everything is in the dark, and you can change every battery and find every piece of equipment without having to like struggle through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The difference of a zipper pull will change your life when you don't have light, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a funny concept to talk about because it's all voluntary, right? We're not just given the gear and have to work around it. And so I think a lot of people will take that as like, oh, just use what you're given. And it doesn't work like that at all for the majority of the people here in the US and, abroad, where it's completely voluntary. Makes things more complicated, I would think.
Well, the attitude of use what you're issued is also like old timer talk. Just use what you're issued. No. Like, no. Sorry.
If it's
not
sucks,
interested.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a retro I mean, it's such, yeah, it's just, I think that I was in Ranger Bat when that was a thing, and I think that has changed. I'm pretty sure people I've talked to that have come out afterwards are like, no, the attitude's completely different. We no longer like look at somebody who buys their own pouches as like suspicious. It's, there are certain limitations within different organizations, oftentimes driven by lawyers and liability teams. And there always will be a guy who's like, oh, I'm going to try this random thing. What happens if we store magazines upside down? And you're like,
yeah,
no, because we jump out of planes and your feet hit the ground and they go, whoop. So, yeah. But
I do want to get your opinion though on that. Do you think like the trajectory of the gun culture on social media is going in the right direction, or if it's degrading? Because I've kind of had my own thoughts on this, but overall, I think yes. But I always wonder what you kind of think about that.
Let's start by picking it apart a little bit. So the trajectory of gun culture on social media, my opinion about gun culture itself is that it's expanding. Gun culture writ large is expanding away from our parents' generation, which saw it as a little bit of a niche hobby and saw it as a little bit of like, oh, this is Phil. Phil likes to hunt. This is Peter. Peter likes baseball. This is right. This is John. John likes to shoot competition. And in my grandparents' generation was one thing where I wouldn't say that my grandparents' generation was as ubiquitous with firearms as we like to think so, because even my grandfather talked about how when he was a young child and he ordered a rifle through the Sears Roebuck catalog, his like stepmother didn't like it or something like that, and he lived in rural America. And so I think we can be a little bit more humble when it comes to the ubiquitousness of the firearm. However, I've also stated that I think the rifle is the icon of Americana. Like, you cannot have the history of America without the history of the rifled barrel or the rifle itself. So I think I think the generation that came before us, where we got the FUDs, and not everyone who is a boomer is a FUD. I get that point, and not everyone who's a FUD is a boomer, whatever.
Yeah.
But you had kind of like the Jeff Cooper era, which I'm no relation, but Jeff Cooper, and then you had, Jeff Cooper, Gunsight, and the boomers were very much so. Firearms was sort of an identity for some, sort of a hobby for others, sort of a pastime, and had kind of left the realm of an implement, a farm, like for some people who grew up on the farm, like it was an implement, it was a tool, you needed to solve certain things, whether it was coyotes killing the chickens or whatever. But in that 70s, 80s, 90s,
I was going to say an era where most things were left stock, not a lot of customization.
Yeah, in the broad sense, I think customization really took off as modularity became like the new hotness. But I think our generation is actually returning to an older and a more, let's just say, I don't want to say pure, but I think gun culture is kind of separating. It's transitioning from a time where the gun culture was a person's hobby that was also part of their identity, to gun culture is so much more ubiquitous now. It's not about, oh, I'm a lady who shoots. It's like, that's not unique. You're just somebody.
Yeah.
Right. It's not an identifier as much. It's just gun culture is so much. You got homesteading and you got family men and you have all of these other parts of life that it's kind of reintegrating into the world. So when it comes to social media, I think what we have is a slight crisis of identity that is possible, or a slight crisis of identity, gun culture as a whole, as in kind of answering the question of what for. The time when gun culture was almost defined by the the prepper in the woods with the BDU jacket and the unshaven, unkeptness is a little bit. It's not real anymore. There are examples, but it's by far not the majority. Now, gun culture is so much wider, and I'm not talking about demographics based on race or age or gender. I'm just saying it's so much bigger. So, in that sense, I think it's going in the right direction. It's just returning to Americanism. Owning a firearm is American, and it's the right thing to do, to take responsibility for your community and your neighborhood and your family, and have some understanding of what rules of engagement look like, and not just be like, it's extremely unpopular right now to say I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. It's an extremely unpopular thing to say, because gun culture is like, well, then what's the point? You're a liability.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot more brotherhood stuff coming back as well. Because there's always been this the fight, at least entering the gun culture, is, do you want to be a lone wolf? Because you can do that, or do you want to be part of a community, a brotherhood, a group of guys that are. And this takes me back to what Gil was saying from your podcast, is just like a group of guys that like really care about each other, versus being that prepper lone wolf in the woods by yourself in your bunker, and you have everything for you, but you don't really have. I mean, for me, I need something to fight for. I need something to prep for, and I do think community is surging a lot more. Last couple of years, I've noticed.
It might be just because of the people that I talk to, or maybe it's just the type of people who are willing to get on a show like this. But you're not the first person who's brought up this is not the first time preppers have been brought up. This is not the first time community has been brought up. You're the first one to bring up lone wolves. But you're like, where I think some of it might just be the fact that you and I are willing to have a conversation about it, might be the sort of self-selecting element that keeps us out of that camp. But I do think that the idea of being like a lone wolf is sort of like, maybe it's not simply that it's out of vogue. It's just sort of, I don't want to be so simplistic about it. I know part of it is it's just not trendy anymore, but the other part about it is it's just stupid. Like, you're not going to do it, man. You're not. No one man can do everything.
So the ape together strong,
Ape together strong. The other thing too, though, is I do think gun culture is leading the way when it comes to, or not leading the way, but really trying to figure out something that's a problem deeper than itself, and that is, in modern, westernized, multicultural world, having a sense of community is very difficult. It's not as guaranteed as it used to be. And we can complain about all of the things that maybe have led to that, whether it's postmodernism or multiculturalism or politics as a whole. And we could sit down and describe extremely eloquently how in generations past, people had a community because they were born into a community, and they had people that they knew and their neighbors, and they had their small town, and they all took care of each other. We can explain in great detail how the Industrial Revolution had some effect on that, or how the World War II and the fracturing of this had, or the breakdown of the nuclear family has had on this. But none of that definition and explanation solves the problem. And so the better part of gun culture is saying, yes, we understand it thoroughly. We're also going to solve it. And I think, some of the things that like Guerrilla Tactical has done, and just how they've kind of presented themselves, or how so much of modern American gun culture is really about doing stuff for the boys, hanging out with each other, spending time, and trying to like really, really reaching out and going, "Hey man, are you doing all right?" And it's good. Yeah. It really is good. So there is this toxic side, but
yeah, and I wonder if the toxic side will always be there, but I think the more and more people understand it's toxic, it might go out of style, The I completely agree. I live, other than hanging out with my wife and my family, I live for going out with the boys and testing gear and hanging out. And that's how I really hit it off with Ethan too. Um, was that like, oh, like I've got somebody that wants to go out and just go out in the middle of the desert nowhere and just shoot and have fun and talk politics, religion, like, just the personal things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sucks he moved.
Yeah, well, we'll have to what we'll have to do is we'll have to ambush him with a reunion,
Yeah.
something goofy like that. I can't do that. I guess I can't say I can do that, but no, I also recently moved, so there's a sense of like kind of figuring out who's where and trying to spend time with people.
Mm-hmm.
But that being the case, yes, absolutely. When it comes to the toxicity, if you build your house on sand, it will collapse. And building your let's just say your position within gun culture on your ability to make snarky criticism of all of the current trends does not a smart man make, and your lifespan is pretty short. So I think toxicity, like if you want to call it toxicity because it's such a political term, will always be there. But the reality of the case, and what I think is really going to happen, is that you will always have the toxic pool of people, but they will be churning bodies out over consistently.
Yeah,
I can think of a handful of people. Exactly, right? Like I can think of a handful of people who have built their identity on some form of resentment, and they're irrelevant. Well, it's not that they're irrelevant, and I'm not. I'm talking about like public people. You've probably seen their Instagram profile. You've seen their social media profile. And it's like, no, I know who you are. I've talked to you. No interest in having a conversation. I don't care who you are or what you've accomplished or how many followers you have at this point in time. Like I can say with a certain amount of confidence that your brand identity is shallow, and people, you might be the introductory drug where people go, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that part of gun culture or whatever. But as soon as they realize that you're the shallow water, they move on to something else. And maybe that's your role. Good for you, dude.
Yeah. Maybe you'll grow, That makes me think of the positive toxicity side as well. And I know it's kind of a weird thing to bring up, but the Anthony Travis raids, I think fits into the toxic positivity side of gun culture, because
I became familiar with the Travis raids debacle basically when it blew up. Like I didn't really know who he was before. And then my first real, like, I could identify that was when the wool was pulled off every, the scenario, I guess.
Yeah.
How'd that go down? What was that all about?
Well, to tie it into the toxic part of the gun cultures, I think we'll see more of these dudes like him. But at least from our side, because he used to work at Flux, right? Before, a lot of people don't know that, but some people do. Because he used to work at Flux beforehand, and a lot of it was because we needed some kind of contact within law enforcement and military. And I know, like, Stolen Valor it's existed forever. It's not anything new. But with social media, the culture responded to that one in the way it needed to, honestly, in my opinion. So, yeah, he used to work at Flux Defense as our law enforcement military contact. And the crazy thing is he's had so much contact with active duty dudes that had been in high positions. It was interesting to see how somebody like him could infiltrate as far in as he could and give off the presence that he did, so that even somebody like you who never even heard of him before, it was enough of an outrage just like when everything popped off on him, how that could have infiltrated into at least a positive side of the gun culture community. Because he did tout himself as a very positive side of the community.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So the issue was he was basically a stolen valor case where he said he was something that he wasn't. Right.
Yeah. Said he was a Green Beret. Wasn't. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. So let's start with the one thing that's probably the most tragic part of the case is that the thing that he brought to Flux Defense was that he was really well connected. He knew how to talk to people. He had the social skills to address the right people at the right time in the right place in the right well. And to be very clear, that is a skill. Like not everyone knows how to navigate the avenues of the social aspect of and the government aspect. And so if you have been able to build yourself up into a position where you can talk to these people and know how to have communication and you know how the chain of command works and you can figure all that stuff out, that is an asset to any company.
Yeah.
So the sad thing is if he had just not lied about his quote unquote military resume, then he would have been the perfect candidate in that sense for his position.
Yeah. It makes me mad. He would have been great, for a long time greatness,
Absolutely. Yeah, but unfortunately there are many doors that for him will never be open. Never open up again. And it's tragic, but it's also like I mean, you don't have to go. It does not take a genius to understand that this culture hates stolen valor. Whether you're a vet bro or you're a non-vet bro or you're an anti-vet bro, whatever it makes you, whatever camp or subgenre you fit in, there is nobody in this culture who's like, stolen valor funny. No, we all hate it with a passion. So,
and I hope people take it as like, it's high risk, high reward. I understand because I knew him, what the reward for him was huge. High risk, high reward. I just hope people from here on out, and especially then, that no longer is a part of gun culture. And I like, at least speaking to the civilian side of things, I've never been in law enforcement military. I've never wanted to either, but that's not a route that needs to be gone down, as in the civilian side and law enforcement military or former law enforcement military side can coexist, and you're not necessarily greater one over the other. And I'm biased. That's me going out as a person who's never been overseas, never done, never volunteered for that sort of thing. But I do think that kind of a symbiotic relationship needs to be maintained in order to keep this healthily growing.
Okay, so when it comes to gun culture, there is this place for like the veteran to bring his experience into or talk about, or the cop or the whatever. We do value experience quite highly. And I've had this conversation a number of times before. The interesting part that keeps kind of coming up is that we address that there's a symbiotic relationship between, let's just say, two camps within gun culture as a whole. But the reason why there's any form of divide between them is always kind of left fuzzy. And sometimes it seems like everyone has their own reasons for it. Like sometimes it was because military people were put on a pedestal. I absolutely know what you're talking about. I've been there before, or I've seen it. I grew up in a small town, and a guy I knew, he went off to basic training and he was like a trucker or something. And like he came back and suddenly everybody thought he was like a ninja god. And it was like, I went to like Ranger selection and came back from Ranger battalion. And he was like, he suddenly lost his celebrity status for like the 1 week I was home on block leave. Yeah. And so he was like, oh man, you got to tell me about all the Ranger things. And it's like, dude, you're a National Guard 88 Mike. Like, I'm not going to tell you shit. I'm not going to tell you anything. So, so like there's that, right? And then like, I get it, but so I think some of like the exclusionary nature of it might bleed actually from the inter ranks of the military. But when I get out of when I'm spending time with people in the gun culture, no one cares about who you are unless who you were does not line up with who you say you were. So you and I can have a conversation about doing a thing, right? And I can say, well, hey, I'm used to, like, I've done, this is something that I've learned about doing CQB at night with night vision and light lasers and all that kind of stuff. I've learned this. This is where I come. And I understand that you might have an objection, and we have to have some sort of relationship to it, but it's not gatekeeping when I say, yeah, but that's just not how it works. Unless and I can be wrong. I mean, you can but when you challenge the idea, and I have to, sometimes I don't exactly have the words for it. I know there's this thing that gets thrown around a little bit that says, you're not really a master of something until you can explain it in like the lowest possible level. And I don't think that's entirely true. There are some things that require prerequisites.
Yeah.
So it's a rule of thumb, but it's not an absolute.
Yeah. I do look up a lot to the, I know it's a funny term, but the knowledge transfer, I really look up to like Fred, from at Spiritus. A lot of his videos, I don't know if you follow him.
He's Counting Coup?
Counting Coup, yeah. I got to talk. All his videos, man, are awesome. They're just like the most down to earth, like, hey, here's just what regular people need to know. And I like more, I like to see more and more of that as we go on, Yeah,
well, we're doing it. I think we're doing it, and we're doing it in degrees. Like, there's no utopia where everyone is the same, but I think the best solution to like the division in gun culture is kind of like what you were saying is, well, grab a friend and go out and do something. Like, go to the range, go spend some time with people. It's really get out of the house, man. Like, I think the term "go out and touch some grass" is meant to be comically but somewhat derogatory, but it's also therapeutic. It's also therapeutic. Like, are you depressed? Go out and touch some grass. Like, go outside. Go find somebody and just like, hey, dude, I'm not doing well right now. Can we hang out? And someone that you know enough where they're not going to be like, why are you talking to me on a street bench kind of thing?
Yeah.
I think
go make memorable moments.
But we also are much figure out how. Just go out and do it. It's tough because it's not easy, man. It's really easy to go back to your gear issue and rely on the gear that you don't have. Rely on the fact that you don't have gear to use an excuse not to go out and do the things with the people that you should be going out and doing things with.
Yeah.
And I've been that person. I have friends who I've hurt because I've been that person.
No, that's awesome. Like, it's, I don't know. I love having these kinds of conversations just because it only really ends up happening with several people I know, like to get out into the kind of the deeper reasons of why, because I think right now I'm in a place where I need to have a clear why for why I do things. Like, I'm not just going to let somebody be like, you need to do this just because. That no longer takes place in my life. It may have in the past, but that clear why exactly me? Why exactly do I have to, it's something I love talking about. And do I like, I really like that you started this podcast to talk to people specifically about that,
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's encouraging to know that I can do something. I can have something to offer for the boys, as you say. Like, this is where my place is in this industry. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be like, a Browning level manufacturer or that. But this is where I find my place, is having these conversations with people and just being part of the conversation, man. Like, hopefully I can influence, hopefully that by the time I look back in life, I can say I did something good. I helped, I was a part of gun culture as it transitioned from isolated and lone wolf mentality to, a community and a focus in that led Americana to American culture to focus more on what I have control over and what I have influence over, and not, you know, write off all concern as some sort of national level controversy, I guess is probably the right word for it, but maybe
Yeah.
not. So, but yeah, it's good. So I mean, we have been following down this road of, which is kind of an interesting one, because like the conversation that you and I are having now kind of started with gear and then led to culture, and the toxicity that we see in I find it interesting that you refer to it as good toxicity, because I think you can say with a certain amount of certainty that you called Stolen Valor a high risk, high reward. And my opinion of it is, if you inject Stolen Valor into your reputation, which will help you open doors, what you are doing is you are guaranteeing that at some point in time, your empire will fall. Your reputation, once somebody finds out and it gets leaked out there, I know of one story where one guy lied about his military career and didn't and sort of retired before it really caught up to him. But the problem is, it basically cost him his soul. It's probably the shortest way of saying it. I know of one person who sort of made it. They lied about who they were, and it wasn't a big lie, but it was a small enough one, but substantial enough one where I know who they are, and if they came, it would be like, I'm not interested. Sorry. Yeah. They came into the chat, right? It'd just be like, sorry, dude. But if you engage in Stolen Valor, and to be very clear, I think Stolen Valor really happens in two ways. You have people who are unfortunately are like, it's a mental issue, where you're talking about somebody who's got like, you know, all of the medals from now till like the Civil War, all on it. You're like, okay, like you're not taking that person seriously, and they're not all there. Whatever it is, that's one example. Like I've definitely run into people who are like Stolen Valor people, but like not on social media, in the real world, and they're just like, they're usually on drugs, methed out of their brain, and they believe it, but they're not there. And the other version of it is the person who somebody says something about them and they know about it and they have the opportunity to kind of put that to rest, but they don't. And then they allow it to fester and become a thing. And I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen before, where like that form of Stolen Valor works, where somebody says something about you and you ride on those coattails without kind of like, it wasn't true. And that's how it creeps up on you. If you straight up lie about who you were, it will be found out, and it will end your career, and it will close the doors that you have worked so hard to open. Do you think there's other forms of that activity, that type of activity, do you think exist within gun culture? Because I know people have criticized like speeding up your videos, but I don't know. Like, I don't take your Instagram performance seriously anyway. It's supposed to be aspiring and inspiring, but not like evaluative, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of like, I wonder if it started with just people. I mean, okay, there's a clout element, obviously, to wanting to show yourself off on social media, especially when it comes to like shooting videos and this and that. And I understand that, like, as somebody who is new to the culture and then also within social media already, it's easy to want to be like, well, to get more followers, I must present X sort of performance. And I've noticed that from the people who actually film themselves, I guess for the right reasons. I'll say there's two. The right reasons, I think, would be like, you're literally trying to work on your performance, and the only way to do that is to look at yourself through a third person, which would be the camera. Then there's the element of like just doing cool things, because there's nothing wrong with making cool videos. I think intention is always behind each one of those, and as long as people are clear with what their intention is, it's like, hey, I'm posting this because I'm working on X, skill. or I'm just making a cool video because it's cool. And if anyone in the comments is like, hey, wow, like, how did you do this? It'd be like, look, just filming something cool, just kind of fun. I do believe in levity within the community without trying to use it as a form of clout, because creation is, it's the salt of life. It's like everybody wants to create something cool. I've definitely done it. I take pictures for fun, not necessarily for work, but some of the pictures I take are super cool, and I want to make sure that people get to see that. And I've gotten, sometimes I've gotten messages like, hey, are you in the military? How did you get pictures like this? Was this in Afghanistan or this or that? It's like, no, this is just Utah, and the boys in Utah like to go out and to enjoy nature.
Absolutely, yeah. So creation, like part of what keeps the culture alive, or what part of where we're at in the culture right now, is your participation is oftentimes in the content you produce, right? I think there's a certain element to that like I can't always drive up to Utah or down to Utah and say, hey, let's go hang out right now, but I can see what you're doing and see your, and I can follow you on Instagram, as long as I don't make Instagram my identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense. I agree with your point. I do. Is the intention of it matters. Like if you're being intentionally deceptive.
Yeah, and if you're following up
right,
in the comments with even more deceptive intention, then eventually those people do get called out. And there's a lot of Instagram pages now that are literally built upon making memes and calling out people within the community.
That's where I start to stray a little bit, is that like there are a lot of pages that are built up making memes and calling out people in the industry, and a lot of them are just trolls. Like, okay, dude,
yeah,
like I like your criticism is taken, but it's not it's not going to be taken seriously. It shouldn't be, because it's like, okay, like it's funny. I can laugh. I can still like. You said knowledge transfer earlier. Knowledge transfer is easily a reference right now to GBRS group, and like, I can laugh at like a Starship Enterprise joke about the Hydra mount. It's funny, but sometimes it comes across as a little malicious, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not laughing anymore. So
not all of it is a big deal, and this is my general thing. My wife talked about this a lot. Is 90% of things aren't a big deal. They're not. They're just day-to-day occurrences. Just because something happens doesn't mean it's a big deal. Which I do think that's where those pages come in, and they kind of maybe put more resources towards something that's not a big deal than they should. But that's just from my perspective,
Yeah, I mean, I think like the criticism eventually, like the humor of the joke, the meme formats wear out, and the meta version of a meme format is like, a meme smith, and eventually your humor is like, okay, dude, not funny anymore. I'm just not interested.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, that you need to be canceled. It's just, okay, you're not contributing anymore. Thanks for your contribution. Now bugger off, kind of thing.
Yeah. The meme pages that I think are successful and that are a positive influence on the world are usually the ones where there's nothing behind it. There's zero. There's no meaning. There's no pushing any agenda. There's nothing. It's just, here's a stupid dog or something. Here's something that's just, it's innocent fun. And I actually think that definitely needs to be within the culture. I think that's part. Of the levity.
and the ones that play on an inside joke. Like, I definitely follow a couple of like Ranger Battalion meme pages because they're funny, and it's like, oh, I know that story.
Yeah, levity is a big thing. I think within this industry, the whole point is we're making we're making hard goods and soft goods that are there to protect people's lives and or end people's lives, and that's heavy. That's a heavy thing to the world. And so if we only look at it that way, I think that's where people will definitely lose themselves if if everything's terrible and the only reason we're making this gear and equipment is because the world is terrible and everyone's evil, that's not a road I'm willing to go down. But I'm also, not take it to the point of absurd levity where nothing matters. So it's an interesting line to be on, and it's cool to see that there are enough people, at least within the same margin, in order to be like an actual like a vein that it's delivering. You know what I'm saying? I know what I'm saying, but it's just like there's enough people that are like-minded that we're able to keep this thing rolling.
I'm an optimist. You asked me earlier if I think which direction do I think gun culture is going. I think it's I think it's moving in a good direction. I think that it's moving in a good direction, but I also recognize that it will never technically arrive. It'll never arrive at some sort of utopia. There will never be, a golden age of gun culture, unless we're living in it now, and then tragedy. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's really easy. I've been enough places. It's really easy to get extremely jaded about gun culture. Like maybe it's the firearms industry drastically underpays its employees, or the consumers, and I don't mean that derogatorily, but like there's a pool of people within gun culture who criticize and complain about every single item that's produced that is not made with them in mind. And there are people who bring a certain toxicity of like exclusionary elitism, and it's like, bro, if you don't have if you don't have the original multicam black DEFCONs, you can't be a part of this group. And they're not a shoe group people, whatever. You can 100% find it out there. You can, and it's really easy to look at like, oh, this mega corporation is not actually about the Second Amendment, and the NRA is actually a bunch of money laundering garbage cans. And you could really, and all of these are like kind of caricaturized versions of various opinions. And like, you can definitely go out there if you want to get depressed, black-pilled, angry, nihilistic, and lose hope and say a future or whatever, you can do it. You absolutely can do it. You can go out and you can go to New Jersey. You can see the way that the thing, I'm being facetious if you're from New Jersey, but you get my point, right? Like, you can do that, dude. You can complain that everyone's isolated and everyone's alone and no one knows each other and no one talks to each other. Like, because I've been that guy. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes it's a you problem, and we can work our way through it, man. Yeah, I was talking to Colin Underdahl just briefly at one point in time, and he was talking. He's kind of talking about like mental health issues, like anxiety and depression, and he's like, if he was saying something like, go and get a piece of paper, get a pad of paper and a pen, and start writing out that makes you anxious. And I was like, holy goodness, I like that, because I've been keeping a journal for 12 years, 14 years. And it is exactly something that I do in a form of therapeutic way. Like when I am in a I write it out. I write out the problem in as best detail as I can. I am anxious about this because I don't know how to make this decision or whatever. And he was like, it's amazing how many people tell me that writing is stupid. I'm like, why would you converse with that? I don't know. I don't have a full, I'm not going to really release everything about the answer, but it was interesting to see how, like, no, dude, just go write. Like, who cares? So the breakdowns I've heard of Marcus Aurelius and his book, which I have not read, and it's on my reading list. It's just the way that people talk about writing just reminds me of. Yeah. Do you have it? I have it on the shelf. Yeah.
Yeah. A person going through their emotions and their feelings and writing down their anxieties, and then just getting it out there so that they can work through it. And that's why it's been high on my reading list, is because I get that feeling whenever people talk about it, of just like, this is exactly what it is. It's somebody's journal of the hard decisions.
Yeah. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is a good one. And then if you're a Christian, Confessions by Saint Augustine. Those are two really, they're similar in format to some extent, but and historically looking at how we acquired the document, it's like, oh, we actually have a written document from this time. You don't know. I don't know how. I actually don't know how much Meditations by Marcus Aurelius was written with the intent of what we would consider publishing. I don't know. I really don't. I don't know. I know a little bit about I know a decent amount about how like written language transferred from, say, the history of the New Testament and how we acquired what we call the New Testament. But that's kind of, I don't know if we're reading his private journals as much as we're reading an edited version of his private journals, which he intended to have published for the sake of reading. And I would lean in that direction. It's not like we're reading, "Dear Diary, today I spelled the word wrong and I hate my mom." But I don't hate my mom. Please don't clip that.
The one thing I think that I keep coming back to anytime I feel like things may be going, and this is all for like with work, things may be going like down the wrong path or this or that, because within a business there's a lot of good things that happen and really bad things that happen, and then really good things that happen. And I don't know if this is the same with a lot of the other businesses within the industry, but it's always like a flip-flop. Something terrible happens, like our mold breaks, and then something really great happens where we get like either a manufacturing breakthrough, or we get in contact with somebody who is really like gives us the best piece of advice for that time. So it's always this up and down. But we had the opportunity to be with Travis Haley when he was filming his thorax plate carrier stuff, because he came to Utah, and Arias played a big part, and Ben played a part in getting that filmed and being actors within it. Ethan got to be an actor, a bad guy. And we were just in a room one time, and Haley or Travis was saying like, why do we do what we do? There's all this nuance. There's all this like positive and negatives within the business, and then the gun culture. And, to me, the only thing that I could think is like, it's to save lives. Like, and he was like, it's to save lives. We make plate carriers because it saves lives. You guys make your Flux products because it saves lives. And I've used that as my overall, like, and it's why I love most of the dudes within the industry. And I've become friends with a lot of them over social media, over meeting them, is just like the overall through line is I think we're in a positive community, or a positive field for the world. People who make medical equipment, people who, and it's just funny because if you talk to the wrong person, you'd think making firearms or weapon systems is a super negative thing. But I kind of put it all under that one umbrella of like, dude, you make a cool optic mount, or you make a cool weapon light, and that is to help aid save lives. And that's been, my overall takeaway from my short couple of years within the industry and within this sphere of the gun culture.
Yeah, well, we do abhor like the malicious actor. We do. Like if you, I think the caricature that's painted, the caricature of gun culture, which is painted by our detractors, are oftentimes so cartoonish that they can't be taken seriously. Yeah. And I mean, a really good example, like there are some things that like you can take encouragement from, is that like the critics, the people who don't like American gun culture are not the kind of people whose opinion you'd want on about anything. Yeah, maybe in some cases. I mean, there are there are differences in opinion, but like there's a certain issue of gun culture is very focused right now on being responsible to somebody and taking care of an environment and rising to the occasion, where we criticize each other for not being physically fit enough in the event that something would happen. And it's not, like it's like, hey man, I think you're a good dude, but you need to go to the gym. Or we kind of it's so weird to me that it's not weird. It's actually obvious. You have to lie about the thing that's the opposite of truth. But even within gun culture itself, we do not like people who enter in gun culture who are in it for their personal glory, who only we don't like it when it's only about them. And then we also really don't like people who glorify needless violence. Like if you want to find yourself on the outs of this culture, go be the caricature of what we're depicted as by our detractors. And the best part about it is, which one came first? Gun culture came first, and then its detractors. In the history, like, here's a really good example about one of the things that I don't like about it frustrates me when people do this in gun culture, whether it's on the corporate level or the individual level, is when we pander to people based on their socioeconomic, political, or racial preferences or whatever. And the really perfect example would be someone's like, we need to get more, let's just say we need to get more black people into gun culture. And so we'll go look at African-American culture within the greater context of Americana, and we'll try to create a custom narrative version of gun culture and try to market it to them. And it always comes across as disingenuous. It always comes across as like, okay, dude, it's like, it's kind of like, the 55-year-old man still putting Z's on the end of his words instead of S's because it's trendy. It's like, dude, this is beyond cringe. This is disgusting. And the reason why I hate it in American gun culture in the sense of pandering is because there is nothing preventing you from being a part of the community, except for if you hold values antithetical to what we hold as values. And the values that we hold are the preservation of life, the rights of the individual, and the responsibility to your community. And if you think that you're like, oh, I want to be a part of gun culture, but I want to just go randomly shoot at cops and be an anarcho-communist for the purpose of like whatever, and just like, if I want, I'm going to be a warlord. Like, we make jokes about being a warlord in the post-apocalyptic world, but you know what the answer is? None of us want it. It's a joke, dude. And this is I brought this up with Isaac Botkin. I think I was in Minneapolis when the riots kicked off. I was in Minneapolis in 2020, and I remember when the Boogaloo Boys came out, and for a lot of people, it was, for a lot of, including myself, it was like, I thought that was a joke. But no, what happened is you took the joke so seriously, you made it your identity, and you know what happened to all those people? They were all cast out by everyone. They found themselves on the fringes, and it was like, okay, dude, you're not. We're here to support anarchy because we want to like. It was it was this weird mentality that like they all, and the sad thing is they all kind of look the same. They're all fat white dudes with neck beards, and it was like, oh, you're the Boogaloo Boys. Okay,
and they became the face of gun culture at that moment in time to political opposition. And
and I get it too.
Misrepresentation is probably one of the biggest slights against the group as a whole.
It's the only weapon that they have because they don't have a legitimate criticism. It's the only weapon that they have, except for maybe that we're not, like, we shouldn't be engaging in cancel culture in the same way, but we're willing to sort of accept the pandering from time to time, and whatever. But gun culture is different than, say, the military-industrial complex, and whatever that means to whoever's listening. But what it is, but what gun culture is also about is, again, personal responsibility, individual liberty, responsibility to your community, rights not to be, you're obligated not to tread on another person's rights. So, I mean, but the Boogaloo Boys, like, whoever they were in Minneapolis, they took a joke and they made it their identity, and it was like, okay, man, well, you're no longer in our community. I don't
Yeah.
really want. It's not that I don't want to like affiliate with you because it's not politically expedient. It's that your ethics are antithetical to ours. I'm not about wanton destruction for the sake of anarchism or whatever.
Yeah,
it's funny. The jokes are funny,
why,
but you took away a joke.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. What you said earlier is, I think that we are becoming the more pure version of what it's supposed to be.
We're definitely seeking that out.
With the actual meaning of behind of what we do. It's more known. People like you said, people like Isaac Botkin will go out and make a video like why everyone needs an AR-15. And I think videos like that do an incredible amount of good to all the people who are on the fence, trying to figure out if this is the route or not. And, I'll make a video like that. And for someone like me, it's like, dude, that's spot on. That's what I believe. That's what, me and my boys believe. It's what me and my wife believe. So it's, I agree. We're very much on the right path forward.
I have every reason to be optimistic. Like we're more investing in what we have control over.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I believe that it is entirely reasonable within our generation to see the ATF curtailed and the NFA repealed, or at least extremely diminished. I think that's entirely possible. And the way that we get there is it's going to take time, but the time is earnest participation. It's the opposite of being a lone wolf. It's the opposite of, divisive choice. I don't know the word. I don't know where I'm going with that one. I don't want to be like one way.
If it was quick,
if
it didn't take time
if it was quick
for culture to head that way, then it would probably just be a fad and it would flip back over to the other side just as quickly. So taking time's not a problem.
No, not at all. I agree with you there. Well, let's do a hard segue, and let's do one more question for the day, because the good thing, Alex, is that I'd love to have you back on, and that's not the good thing. It's a good thing for me because you're a pleasure to talk to.
Oh, thanks.
Because unfortunately, I have to compliment you somehow, and the recording system since it's got to like deal with bandwidth, you're a little pixelated right now, so I can't really sit here and compare beards or something.
Yeah.
But a subject that can be controversial, and I want to, and you and I kind of brought it up a little bit earlier, is I remember I was in Ranger Battalion when the original Modern Warfare 2 came out, and there was, and the reason why I started, that was the first Call of Duty that I ever played, was the original Modern Warfare 2, and the reason why I played it is because I was in Ranger Bat and Rangers were featured in the game, so it was extremely narcissistic of me. Right? It was extremely like, oh my gosh, they made a video game about me. And trust me, I said that too. What a tool I was. And so, but that was like the only Call of Duty game that I really played. I didn't get to play the original Modern Warfare until just just this year. I never did. And then I didn't get into Modern Warfare 3. And Black Ops was not my thing, and all this other kind of stuff, right? You and I just played the campaign for the new Call of Duty 2, and if I'm not mistaken, the American server went live like an hour ago. So you're taking time out of your gaming opportunity to talk to me. So the frame of the question is, I think the gap between the people who play Call of Duty and the people who know things about guns has gotten really, really small. Mostly because most of our generation, most of the people in gun culture have at least grown up with video games. So it's not so much of like a weird thing over there. Yeah. And now, and then I think when, in 2019 into 2020, when COVID became a thing, and then like Warzone became a thing, like the gun culture kind of rallied around Warzone. Yeah. Partly because Activision got really smart and they started hiring or modeling characters off of people in the industry.
Yeah.
And like I think that was a really good move. If they keep that up within the Modern Warfare franchise, that'll be a good move.
Yeah.
But then also gun culture, like we'd now go play Warzone together, or we'd go do stuff together. And we, you know, when we're all disparate across the country.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to the new Call of Duty? Are you looking forward to the new multiplayer or the DMZ? What's your gun guy take on a gun game?
Well, so first of all, just from the campaign, which I said I had finished a couple days ago, it's so cool to see things like Unity risers and the flip to center and things that you own, and not only own, like things that are like incredible. Just like, yeah, I will always want my gun to be like that. It's now in the game. I'm super pumped because I'm a very big team deathmatch guy. I've always been. I even go back sometimes and play the old Modern Warfares just to play team deathmatch. Warzone I've only started liking Warzone since like I started at work. We started playing Warzone Wednesdays. It was like another reason to get the boys together, and we're like, let's think of this as a business. If we can learn how to communicate in this game better, we can be better communicators at work. So it's weird.
Cool.
It tied into like my life in a couple different ways, aside from just pure entertainment. But not only that, like my wife plays. Like me and my wife had played Warzone. Like she's gotten wins. Literally, like I would die and she would kill the last person and win. I got very lucky with my wife. She's like the bomb. We got into games at kind of like the best time when we were dating, and also in like the first couple years of marriage, where she's got gold guns on Call of Duty. Like she's leveled guns all the way up to having gold camos, and I'm like proud of that as a husband. It's funny, but yeah, I'm super pumped on the new Modern Warfare 2, just because I have been playing the 2019 Modern Warfare since the day it came out. We literally brought a bunch of Xbox into work that day, and we just didn't work. We just played the new 2019 Modern Warfare for like 2 days until we're like, okay, we got to get back to work. But it's infiltrated every part of my life, whether it's like relationship, work, just with the boys. So I look forward to playing a lot of it.
Well, at least they still have crossplay. So I'm on PlayStation, and we'll have to get some games in here soon. I had the same interaction when I was playing the campaign, and it was like, I think it was like the first mission or second mission or whatever. One of the first mission where you get a hybrid mount where you have like a tall mount on an AR.
Yeah.
You got an M4 with like a tall mount, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And you have the flip to center, and I was like, oh no, they did it.
Yeah.
I thought that I was right there with you. Like, okay, this is cool. I am very happy that they're paying attention to what people actually do. It just felt like, okay, that was neat. Like, I am not looking for perfect realism when it comes to a video game. I am not, because I do not want to have a 8-hour loading screen of ball crushing pain sitting on the tarmac waiting to go jump. Like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to be like, okay, cool. Respawns, run in, blah, whatever.
Yeah.
There are things that I do think realism has its place. And for those who are listening, who are going to pursue a career in video games and the intersection of gun culture and video games, where you find mastery is where you pay attention to what realism is important.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's funny, even just to make Modern Warfare like a little more realistic, is I do like flipping all my guns over to semi-auto.
Me too.
Even though it's
absolutely
contrary to how the game is supposed to be played, and I'll probably lose more gunfights. I just kind of want to get used to being that one shot per trigger pull.
Yeah, if Call of Duty, this is what I think they should do, is they've got their quote-unquote tier 1 mode, which is the hardcore. It should default all guns to semi-automatic and up the recoil on fully automatic weapons.
Yeah.
I think it should default all AR-15 style, all, whatever you want to call them, weapons to semi-automatic. Default them, and if you happen to switch them over to fully automatic, the recoil should be like tripled. because it's not exactly quote unquote realistic in the sense that like if you can figure out how to control recoil, it is. But everyone who's used an AR-15 or even an actual like M4A1 with a full automatic trigger knows that that fully automatic is useful for one thing and one thing only, and that's burning brass so that staff can take the can home.
Yeah. But
I mean, there's other applications.
Yeah, and we'll definitely play. We'll definitely play because Warzone's become at least for this foreseeable future, a very common thing that that me still play with Ethan probably every week. I think I played with you one time.
Yeah, I haven't been on Warzone I haven't been on Warzone since the World War II thing started coming out.
Yeah,
it's probably been about a year.
Yeah. But I do gravitate towards the more modern. I'm less about playing the World War II games now. The Battlefield that came out had the Flux MP17 in it, so I was like obligatory. I had to play that. It was awesome. But the game kind of sucked, so I'm waiting for our stuff to enter into specifically an Infinity Ward Call of Duty game.
Okay, so I was going to ask if you were able to sneak one in on the new one, but I guess you answered my question.
We tried really hard. The developers are so hard to get a hold of, and for good reason. I get it if you have millions of people who are just like, I hate this gun, but you know, you can't just email them. So getting contacts for that kind of thing is tough. Somehow, some dude at EA in the Battlefield development must have liked the MP17, the precursor to the Raider. But now we're just like, we need to get into Call of Duty because, you know, then when we play Warzone Wednesday, we could use the Raider.
Well, for those who are listening, if you or someone you know has a connection into Activision or a major like AAA video game publishing company that has the ability to ask the question or get one of us connected with, how do they make this selection process? That I think because I 100% agree with you. When you're talking about, you know, like, can you give me a rough estimate of how many Flux Defense Raiders there are out in the wild right now? Can you give me a rough estimate?
Yeah, and this may surprise people, but because of manufacturing issues, there are maybe 4,000.
Okay, so there's maybe 4,000 Flux Defense Raiders out in the world, right? And so you have, you know, and this is just like I'm saying rough estimate. Like I'm not on the waiting list, but I'm supposed to be. So, oops, sorry. Right. That's my fault. But so there, you know, but more people know what it is than have one. But if every person, so there's maybe 4,000 more, let's just say 4,000 customers as a pool base. You are still dealing with, you have a customer service line where you have to communicate with people. Now take that 4,000 and make it 10 million. And the last thing you want is the guy who's responsible for editing guns to be like, you used the wrong color blue on the paint marker that was written on the side of the M4. Like, yeah, I completely get it. The question is there an agency that is sort of like the go-to people for when Activision, Battlefield, or whoever wants to go? They're like, hey, we're building a shooter game. Who do we want? Like, what do we want to do? They need to you need to have someone that you talk to. And I can say one of the things that will make or break any contemporary shooter is 100% how well you do the firearms. If you've got the one, I'll go back to Ghost Recon Wildlands. If they did not have the opportunity to switch the weapon from full to semi, I probably wouldn't have played that game as much. Then, or I might not have even played it. And then when they came out with the next one, which was Breakpoint, the reason why that game was trash is because your representation of firearms and everything to do with the gun felt like a McDonald's commercial. You messed up that entire game. Because everything felt like a McDonald's commercial. Nothing was. Everything was clunky. Everything was half participated, not like half made, half baked, and that was the make or break it of those two games. which we know that there's developers or whatever, but
yeah,
we'll see how like having a good representation or a good rep that's not just some vet bro who wants to sell you Ranger on your maybe on retainer is going to make will in the fire in shooters make you money. If you mess that up, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
So bummer.
Nope, that's exactly. Yeah, if anyone's got contacts, let us know. The DLCs are still, still get into a DLC.
Well, yeah, it's amazing that. Go ahead. Not only that, but what?
Oh, the P320 is in the game, so it's there. So
in the new one?
I looked at a leaked weapons list because for multiplayer, and I guess the P320 is in there they use a different name, but it can be done as an attachment.
I thought I saw that it wasn't in the game.
Well, I guess now we'll know today because.
I guess we'll know today. Yeah. Well, both of us are going to get off this call and jump right on. So if I'm killing you in the lobby in like 30 seconds, oops. Oh well. Now everyone's wondering like, oh man, they just want to get off the call. But that actually, to be very clear, yeah, we got to play game. I got to do work. I got to play games. I do have a busy schedule today.
Yeah.
But I will. I'll see you there. So let's call this. Let's call this conversation. Let's call this as. Let's let the fates call it. We're just at about 2 hours, but Alex, it's been a really good time talking to you. Thank you for diving into some of the harder topics. The purpose of this podcast is definitely to get in the harder subjects. And I really do appreciate that you've taken time out of your day to have a talk about what you think matters about gun culture and getting into some of the deeper kind of like this is how I got here. This is what I think about. I look forward to hanging out with you. I look forward to spending time with you, but I also I look forward to what you are bringing to gun culture writ large. So thank you very much there.
Well, thanks, man. I'm honored as always, and it's always fun to be noticed for the things you do.
Well, we give a lot of lip service to looking out for one another, and sometimes you just actually have to do it. So. I know there are people who are probably listening to this show who know who they are, who have been that person who reached out at the right time that kept me from doing something that I shouldn't have done. Like I've never been suicidal, but there are definitely times where someone was like, "Hey man, what are you doing today? You want to hang out? Are you doing all right?" And they little did they know, they asked at the exact time where I was like, "No, I'm not all right. I'm alone and I'm depressed and I'm something." And
yeah.
Dude, you got it. Well, where can people find you? Where can they bug you? And where are they going to slide into your DMs and say, kill me in Warzone?
All right. Well, Alex, Free Time Alex. That's my main one on Instagram. But my tentacles reach out pretty far. If you have any issues with your Flux Raider or you have questions, I'm Alex at Flux Defense is my email, and that's where I handle, the customer service stuff. I started my own business, Tumi Tactics, as a little side thing. So Tumi Tactics on Instagram is another one. And then, from there, like those are my main things, those are my main projects. And, I'm always available to chat with people.
Yep. So I've got one of your Tumi multi-tools. I've got one of your little tools, which by the way, is fantastic.
Thank you.
It does exactly what it needs to do. It's nice and small. And it's not, thank you for not advertising it solely as beer bottle opener with other tools.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a useful thing. Thank you very much. Are you working on other multi-tool style projects, or is that where we're at with Tumi right now? Or am I asking the wrong question?
I've got a Gen 2 tool, which almost doubles the capacity of features in the same size. So it'll add at least 2 extra tools in the same size, which is pretty dope. And I am eternally jealous for companies like HRF where they can think of these like little 3D printed things. I'm working on something that can enter into that sphere. It's just that problem of like, I need to have a good enough idea, but that's where I want to go. I want to get into the MJF 3D printing, small parts sphere of things before I can think of anything truly large and innovative.
Innovation happens by degrees and oftentimes at the cost of the tinkerers. That is not my idea. That is Nicholas Nassim Taleb in his book Anti-Fragile. But hey, you know, I am known to flex on the readers. This is my library. Look at how smart I am. Moby Dick is over here. You know, whatever. But
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I know where to find you. Now they know where to find you. To close off, this has been the Redacted Culture Cast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want to, you can reach out to us on Instagram at Redacted LLC. You find our stuff at Redacted at the our website at www.redactedllc.com, which is the horrible way of trying to say it, but you know where to find our stuff. We appreciate you. Go out and build gun culture. We don't just need to talk about it. Alex, thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Dude.